Okay, you too. Good morning. Welcome to another day, a phenomenal day to make some money with Ethereum options. It's a beautiful day. Uh, got a lot of great information to share with you. I think today we're going to go a little bit deeper into actually how I go about making my trades with the data that we get from our charts and our optimal entry point state. We're going to break it down a little bit more, and we'll probably get a couple of trades in. All right, YouTube. All right, let me make sure I get this audio together. 1 second, bear with me. Okay, YouTube, we're back. Just finished a couple of audio adjustments. You all should be able to hear me now. All right. So yeah, today's stream we're going to go into a little bit more about um, how our trading view indicators, our unique setup, allows us to make profitable trades utilizing Ethereum options. You can basically do an Ethereum option like anywhere nowadays. The only difference is if you were to actually utilize a blockchain, you're going to be able to get far more value for your options trades. Um, right now, as far as the blockchain space and options trading, the best value for your money is going to be utilizing the hyperliquid blockchain. But it's not necessarily available to US residents or US citizens within the United States unless you utilize a VPN. That may get you in a little bit of trouble. So we have a few options to take advantage of when it comes to US products, blockchain and decentralized exchanges called DEXs. That's what we're going to be utilizing. So my favorite chain to use is Arbitrum. Um, it's a Ethereum layer 2 chain where you can actually use Ethereum just as you would on the Ethereum blockchain for gas or how to facilitate your transactions fees. But it's very minimal. When you utilize the Ethereum blockchain, it takes a while for your transactions to process relative to other chains, the more modern iterations of blockchain technology. And it's also quite expensive to use Ethereum just in general, relative to other blockchains. It's come a long way, but it's still quite pricey. Now, a layer 2 blockchain like Arbitrum is extremely efficient when it comes to making trades. And depending on the crypto wallet that you use, you're going to have some opportunities where you may be able to get discounts at certain exchanges where you're going to place your trades. I know a lot of people that may be seeing this content. They may not be familiar with what I'm talking about, but just stay tuned. We'll break everything down to you over time in a very down to earth, easily digestible format. Um, I know the chart may be a little bit complicated when you're trying to understand candlesticks, but quite frankly, it's not that complicated at all. You're basically just looking at time frames and the price movement within that time frame to once you be able to understand how candlesticks work, it is just that simple. You're just looking at a vertical rectangle, a vertical bar, and a specific time frame is quantified within that bar. So, for example, this 15 minutes, this stands for 15 minutes. You can see that the explanation pop up when you scroll over top of it. It just tells you in every 15 minutes, this is what's happening in this particular bar. All right. So at 8:45 a.m. yesterday, you saw a significant price jump. And you've been seeing the price kind of trickle down since yesterday morning. Now, we have a ton of information since yesterday about what's going on in the market. So, like I said, today we're gonna break a couple of things down. If you're looking at the chat, I do have basically what to watch out for catalyst wise, or if there's a price breakdown, what to look out for, and potential entry points for your options trades, whether you're long, meaning you feel like the price is going to go up, or if you're short on the market, meaning that you feel that the price of the assets or the Ethereum market is going to go down. Once again, for those just checking out the channel for the first time, we have a tremendous setup. I put in a lot of work to be able to help people make extra money in the market. I love to see people doing well. I love to see people prosper. Um, and quite frankly, a lot of people who have established wealth, have become millionaires, they become very, very selfish and they don't want to share. They want to gatekeep. They want to hide everything. Maybe that's the reason for it. But quite frankly, um, with options trading, I've made a significant amount of money trading options, and it's been the easiest money I've ever made. Like I made a lot of easy money throughout my life, but between real estate and options trading, I've made a good amount of money, like life changing money. Now, with that being said, options trading is not easy. If you're going in cold turkey, you don't really know what you're doing, you're trying to find your way. I took about a couple of years before I actually became profitable trading options. But during that whole time, I utilized my IT background and ultimately it served me extremely, extremely, extremely well. And I have a lot of experience to the point where I'm a credentialed certified cybersecurity analyst, cybersecurity professional, and more importantly, my experience as a cybersecurity professional is within the banking system. So I've been affiliated with banks and working in banks since 2002. And then most recently up to 2024, where it just became to a point where I was just doing so well that I just, a salary that someone could pay me, it just wasn't going to be sufficient enough for me to, uh, it wasn't worth my time, simply put. Now, with that being said, I love to see people doing well, and I have a wealth of knowledge. And I feel like I infiltrated the financial Illuminati with an agenda to help people who who may be struggling, who just need to figure out like how can I find a way in this world where the price of goods and services is astronomical and there's really no way to beat inflation? People really have this mindset. So ultimately, I love to help people, and this is one way I can do so. Um, but bear with me, follow along, and I'll break down how to make money trading options with Ethereum specifically, because that's the one I love. Uh, I say Ethereum, and I'm partial to Ethereum because Bitcoin and Ethereum go hand in hand, as well as pretty much every cryptocurrency follows the trend of Bitcoin. It's a ton of scams in crypto, but however, whether it's a scam or not, certain assets have a strong, very, very strong passion from citizens across the globe. And Bitcoin and Ethereum definitely lead the way as far as passion. Now, Bitcoin is the market leader. So whatever Bitcoin does, everything's going to follow. And Ethereum really tags along to Bitcoin. But what happens is Bitcoin it's sort of like imagine a dangerous situation, right? And you and your friend are walking down let's just say a alley, right? A dark alley in the dark night. And you're in a sketchy area. So what happens is Bitcoin is sort of like the big tough guy. Ethereum is sort of like the scrawny, intelligent guy behind Bitcoin. And you all are walking down the alley. What happens is Bitcoin just kind of burleys through the alley, ready for whatever. And then just so happens Bitcoin may stumble on a can and trip and fall. The thing with Ethereum is Ethereum has the opportunity to see the can, sidestep the can, or back up, right? And not make the same pitfall. I say that as an investor or someone initiating the trade. You can see what Ethereum is going to do because Bitcoin does it first. And so that's ultimately why we love Ethereum as an asset to trade. I personally am not the biggest proponent of buying a bunch of coins and waiting for them to moon. That's cool. That's cool. You can do that. But why not just make money on the way up? Why not make money on the way down? And that's what you get, or that's the benefit of options trading. So, but I digress. Let's kind of hop in the chart, kind of see where things are right now. Ethereum is holding at about $1,877. And we'll speak about this momentarily about the range that we're in. Bitcoin is holding at about 64.5. So these are really good areas for Bitcoin relative to what could happen next in the market. As we're looking at the 15-minute chart with Ethereum specifically, right? We're seeing that there is a push downward. There's a downtrend, but overall, there seems to be a lot of, here we go. We're pumping a little bit, but there seems to be something going on in the crypto market, specifically Bitcoin and Ethereum, where institutional players are beginning to position themselves for the bull run. Now, we got to be careful here because when you have a lot of institutional players, there's going to be a ton of manipulation. And I mean a ton of manipulation. When we feel like the price is going up, there's going to be a manipulator that wants to delay that and ultimately try to sink the price, or a group of manipulators. A lot of quote unquote crypto whales or institutional whales who have billions and billions and billions of dollars to waste, literally, will make a mockery of price, Bitcoin price, Ethereum price, just for the sake of doing so, just because they can. I come from this financial space, so I understand uh, the psyche of very, very wealthy people. Um, as my career as a cybersecurity professional, I had the luxury of one of my job duties of vetting individuals, and I'm just going to keep it really simple. I don't want to get into NDA stuff, but vetting individuals who were requesting the ability to move billions of dollars at a time. I'm talking extremely wealthy individuals who have the ability. You never hear about them, you never see them. They're not famous, they don't want to be famous, but they need the ability to move a ton of money at will. And that was my cybersecurity profession. So when we look at the market right now, it looks like a great opportunity to get in for a long position. But I just don't. Wow. Okay. So we're seeing a good amount of price movement. But we did a really good bounce from 1870. We're going to 1890. And yeah, it might be time to get in. So what I think I'll do for the first time, I'll put a little money in a wallet that I rarely use, a crypto wallet. And we're gonna look at the market. But we never want to make a hasty decision, right? So what I like to do here is I want to get a bigger picture, right? And this is where technology really comes into play. We can utilize artificial intelligence, large language models. It really doesn't matter at this point because they're all getting really advanced and they're at a point where they're going to give you valuable information. So what we're going to do here, and we're going to do this live, is we're going to utilize the data that we get from the chart. We'll have we'll use Chat GPT. We'll have Chat GPT analyze the data based upon a probability level of what we're seeing with the live data in order to gain a optimal entry point in our long or short options trade. It does not matter. We don't care if the price goes up. We don't care if the price goes down. We care what the data tells us the highest probability of occurrence, whether it's up or down. It doesn't matter to us. We remove all emotion and we let the data tell us not just the highest probability of what's going to happen, but if certain caveats occur, if certain monkey wrenches, if you will, are thrown into the equation, how should we adapt in real time? And how should we manage our positions? So, um, bear with me here. I'm going to grab a couple of notes, but it's interesting as we look at our table here on the 15-minute, it's telling us we're in a micro bull run with, on a scale of 0 to 10, the long is at a 5. So we're at about halfway to the roof being blown off of the price resistance at the moment. That's very good. The short side is only at a 1. So there's not a lot of data within the market, or there's not a lot of money or selling within the market right now. People are looking to buy. This is an attractive price point of Ethereum. And anything over $2,000 for Ethereum, yeah, in the long run, you're gonna be in a great position, in my opinion. I got into Ethereum when it was about $600. This is many years ago when I first started to dabble in crypto. I should have gotten in much sooner. Maybe in about like 2011, I should have been buying Bitcoin, but quite frankly, the infrastructure wasn't there. But when I did get into crypto, Ethereum was about $600 or so. Now, we rarely see Ethereum tests $1,000, right? It's rare. I can't even recall. Maybe it got down to maybe 1,000 or roughly around 1,000 during what 2023 or so, maybe the first quarter or so of 2023. And then, we've seen close to 4,000K Bitcoin, excuse me, 4,000K Ethereum. So you're talking a tremendous amount of runway that we have ahead of us. I mean, Ethereum at $1,500, that's an absolute buy if you're holding for the long haul. But I said that to say this. We have a couple of thousand to go before we start, approaching like a real cap. And that's going to take some time. We may get there next year, but uh nevertheless, we have a long positive runway ahead of us. And mind you, we still have the Clarity Act um in the works, and there's a ton of institutional money. I just want to put that into the perspective really quickly. So you have about $3 billion of market cap. We'll just round it to three, right? We'll say just three even, just to say a ballpark figure. We got about $3 billion worth of liquidity in the crypto market. The stock market, where most of the institutional money is invested, is in the trillions and trillions and trillions, multi trillions of dollars. The stock market itself can lose $1 trillion in a single trading day. The whole crypto market has less than $4 billion of money inside of it. It's been a sketchy industry. There's been a lot of scams, there's been a lot of illegal activity, et cetera, et cetera. However, the technology is absolutely sound, absolutely life changing for anyone who uses the banking system. It's life changing. You get way more yield than any bank would ever give you if you know what you're doing. Buying these, uh, you know, meme coins. You can make some money, but quite frankly, you're dealing with scammers. You don't know who created the projects. You don't know who's behind them. You don't know how the reserves are being managed. It's a difficult thing to understand if you're not educated on blockchain technology and how it's utilized. Now, but I digress. Let's get back into the chart and the data, and we'll break a couple of things down. So, I did a lot of number crunching prior to the stream, and we'll get deep into things here. So, let's go and see where we are. So, on a 5 minute chart, and what I like to do is grab the 5 minute. I like to grab the 5 minute, the 15 minute, the 30 minute, the 1 hour, and the 4 hour chart, right? And the great thing about AI at this particular point is once you tailor it or craft it, uh, you're going to be in a tremendous space. You're going to be in a tremendous space. So, and basically what we've done is we really crafted it. So, just give me 1 second here. I want to check out a couple of things. 1 second. 1 second here. Let's see. 1 second. I want to check a couple of things, make sure we're lined up for the stream. Okay. All right. So we should be good to go here. So let's get into a couple of things. So right now, the live Ethereum map that we need to be looking out for is a bullish acceptance above $1,892. That's what we need for a bull run or a potential long position to be initiated. So we really need to see that price go up a little bit more. We saw on the two candles ago, so at the 11:25 candle, so about 11 minutes ago, we saw that push up right here. It pushed right into this resistance level. I would not be surprised. And basically, what we're seeing in this trend is there's a real push up into this resistance level. This 1892 area, if we can get past this 1892, we're going to be in real shape here. The Ichimoku cloud that you see here and here, we're just coming out of a negative pressure Ichimoku cloud. And we saw the positive price action here. So this was the bottom. Whenever you get to the crossover between a negative Ichimoku cloud or a red cloud over to a green cloud, what you're seeing is negative selling pressure to actual buying pressure. And there's a lot of volatility within this area. You're going to see the prices spike when there's a crisscross between the red Ichimoku cloud, this big cloud here, and it got smaller, and then it switched over to a green cloud. So what you'll see, it's a bit of a delay on the Ichimoku cloud's uh, actual data versus the actual price action itself, but it shows you exactly what's going on. So we saw the pump here. This area right here in the Ichimoku cloud is basically these bars right here where the price pumped. There's a bit of a squeeze, and that's what you're seeing from this candle wick, its resistance level that was met and then pushed down. But these are where the volume candles come in handy. These volume candles, the thickness of them, it tells you how heavy is the selling. Or if it's a green candle, how heavy is the buying. So what we're seeing here is the selling was really, really thin. It was thin. And then there's still a lot of favoritism toward buying this Ethereum asset right now. But we're still waiting. We're in a bit of an indecisive zone here. So this isn't a place to actually open a trade. And we have that in the chat where you're going to be able to have the opportunity to actually make the right trade or get in at the right time based upon a high probability. So as we go through the timelines, we're just going to see the different time frames. We're just going to see where we are. On the higher time frames, we see that there's an uptrend. Once you get to the 30-minute and the 1 hour, you're going to see an uptrend starting to tick up right here. This is a great area because something's going to shake. Something is going to break. So let's take a deeper look here and break down a couple of things. So if we get to the $1,892 mark, we need to start looking at a push to 1900, a push to 1904, and then ultimately 1915 before we start to see a little bit of pushback. So we have some legs to grow and some potential to earn. So if you get in at $1,892, if the price jumps there, we're probably going to touch 1900, 1904, and potentially 1915. Now, if there is a rejection or a loss of $1,875, we got a little bit ways to go down. We can go down to 1,869. If we touch that, we're more than likely going to hit $1,863 and then potentially down to 1,850. But if the price is between $1,875 and $1,892, we're right in the middle where the price can swing either way. So it's like two sides of noise. There's a side of negative noise and there's a side of positive price action noise. So we need to be careful here. This is the zone where people really get chopped up. They're thinking the price is going to go a certain kind of way. They may have seen yesterday's price action, and then they have this intuition or feeling that the price is going to continue to go up. And that's where the market manipulators come into play and they push the price down. Mind you, these are institutional players with the big bags. I'm talking billions and billions and billions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're going to manipulate the market. They're going to play both sides. They may own the asset, but they probably got it for a very cheap price, maybe the 600 or less that I referenced in when I first started buying Ethereum. And they have a ton of it. They got tens of thousands of Ethereum, tens of thousands of the assets. And so what they're going to do is go against the grain. So if the market is showing, hey, the price can go up even more, they're going to hop in and open short positions and then sell off their assets at at a profit because they got in where the price is very cheap, or they mined it themselves, which where they got it for dirt cheap, right? And then they're going to sell off their assets, bringing the price down while gaining in their short trade that they've opened. And then they'll buy back again while the price is going down and cheap, and they'll close their short position, and they'll just win and win. So when you have that type of manipulation, you have to be a sniper. You gotta hit your target and get out. You gotta sneak in, survey the landscape. You gotta get out. So we really need to be careful within this range, this 1875 range to 1892. We need to see a definitive break between this area. If we get a breakdown below 1875 or 1892 or a break above 1892, then we're going to need to go ahead and take some action here. But I want to walk you all through how I would approach this if I didn't do the work already. And mind you, things change from candle to candle, from time frame to time frame, right? But we're not seeing a ton of volatility today, which is a good way to look at it. So let's break it down. So what we'll do here is normally, not even normally, when I first began to do my analysis, what I would do is I would take my trading view chart and I would just download the chart data, right? For each time frame. So for example, 5 minute, 15, 30, 1 hour, 4 hour. That's a large portion of data to be analyzed. So I would download the chart data and then I would upload this to a large language model like ChatGPT, for example. And I would ask ChatGPT to uh, devise an optimal entry point for a long or short trade. There is no preference. I may give them the leverage level that I would use, or I may not. But I tinkered and tinkered and tinkered for quite some time as I developed my optimal entry point strategy. And so that comes back to this indicator right here. This OEP institutional state engine version 6.2 state emitter, it is a beast. And that's what we see right here at this table right here. Instead of guessing the market, I see a lot of YouTubers, and this is kind of why I hopped into space. I see so many financial YouTubers speak about, hey, the market's going to do this, or we got this pump coming in, yada, 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 and could be completely wrong. And it was just infuriating to me because I'm like, okay, hold on. They may have taken a class about, you know, technical analysis and they know a little bit of the verbiage. Phenomenal. Do that. However, but people or the viewers really rely on this information. They will absolutely get wrecked. They will absolutely take losses. And a lot of these countries where these people are viewing these videos, they don't have the type of economy, they don't have the type of wealth, they don't have the type of expendable income to actually be investing. These investments really mean something to people versus someone trying to get engagement or viewership to line their pockets when they're not actually making the trades. They're not actually putting in sound information. They're just guesstimating. So I took a lot of the guesswork out through a lot of analysis based upon my skill set, based upon my professional expertise and experience. I can speak to blockchain technology. I can really break these things down to a point where I can make it digestible to the layman, to the average person who has no idea of what I'm talking about, other than you can make a long or short position. You can wager whether the price is going up or down. So, as I said, my goal is to help people. And this tool is absolutely helpful. If you really understand trading, you can look at it and see that this table does all of the heavy lifting for you. It tells you the state of the market, it tells you the higher time frame of the market, it tells you the regime, the actual date and time or markets that are open now. Asia is asleep right now. London is getting ready to close their day. Right now, we're in the Wall Street, New York regime. And then we have the mode. It's a standard mode, a standard way of analyzing the market data. It tells you the value of the day of the asset per day is below the value that it should be trading at or could be trading at. It tells you the weekly value of the price. It tells you the micro state of the market. And right now, under the 2 hour, it's currently in a bear state. It tells you the probability of a long, how advantageous it would be to create a long position. And right now you're at a 1 out of a 0 to 10 along the 2 hour candle. And then you have the short probability, which is currently at about a 2 or 3. So these are very important pieces of information to have before you go into a trade. You need to know whether it's a bear market. Is it a micro bear market or short term bear market? Is it a probability for a long or short position? And how much of that is weighted? Is it a higher probability, lower probability? We're still dealing with numbers that are under 5. Whenever you see like a 6 within our table, either for a long or short position, yeah, you're going to be able to make some money if you created a long or short position if it's a 6 or higher. These are profound ways to make money. You got to think about it. Most people in America, I think the median average income is about what? You know what? Let's be exact. Let's figure it out. What's the median average? Let's say the median income for workers in America. Let's check it out. Let's see what ChatGPT says. So it does take a bit of a second. I do use the higher performance. So what we have, it says full-time wage and salary workers in the United States, the median earnings were $1,235 per week in the first quarter of 2026, approximately $5,352 a month, approximately $64,000 per year. $64,000 per year. So let's do this after taxes. Let's see what people actually take home. All right, ChatGPT, let's move along. Speed it up. Okay, so about $1,100 per week. That's on average, right? That's a significant amount of money because you got to think you have millionaires and billionaires, right? Who are making up the vast amount of income that's generated in the United States, right? The 1% has more money than like 96% of America. The lower end of the spectrum, or even the middle end of the spectrum, is not seeing $60,000 per year. So you're talking about 25, $30 an hour in that range. A lot of people would take that money and say, that's good money. I'm making 20 to $30 an hour. Break that down into an 8-hour shift, right? You're only talking about $30 times 8 is $240. You can make far more than $240 in a given day. That's not to say there won't be risk, because there's always risk with investing. However, there are so many compounding factors when it comes to options trading, especially if you utilize a crypto wallet. You're going to be able to get interest on your crypto that's sitting in your wallet in between the time that your trades are inactive or you're looking to make a trade. So, I mean, it's so tremendous because you can actually do the things that the banks do to make money off of our deposits, right? Um, I mean, I would definitely advise utilizing a brokerage. Not even if you have a lot of money, but even if you have a little bit of money, because you're going to get far more benefit, and to a smaller degree, you're going to gain interest on your idle funds, sort of like you do with custodying your funds or your liquidity within a crypto wallet. So it's so much to say, but I want to give you all so much information all at once. So just bear with me here as I try to keep everything in unison and try to make sure I get everyone a clearer understanding of how to approach these things. But let's get that. But I digress. So let's get back into it. So I want to go ahead and get some data from these charts. So I used to download the data, but I didn't need to download the data because ChatGPT is sophisticated enough to just understand what the screenshot looks like and what it means. So right here, we're going to take a 5-minute chart and we'll just do a simple screenshot. It's going to suffice. Um, we'll screenshot a 5-minute. We'll screenshot a 15-minute chart. Just let everything load here. Okay. And we're going to screenshot a 30-minute chart. All right. And let's do a 1 hour. Just let it load here. All right. And let's do a 4 hour for perspective. All right. So actually, we're going to do this one again because I don't think all the data loaded in our table. There we go. All right. So what we'll do here, we'll go over to ChatGPT. We'll start a new chat, and we'll just keep a simple prompt, right? And we're basically just going to say, let's analyze the data, right? The data from this chart for an optimal entry point with options trade. Let's just say we'll keep it simple. We're not going to go too crazy now. Leverage is a whole thing that we need to consider, right? But let's just say we'll keep things simple. We won't even get into leverage. We'll save that for a later time. But let's just say let's analyze the data from this chart for an optimal entry point trade with utilizing Ethereum. So as a cybersecurity IT professional, when you're dealing with AI, you need to really be specific, right? It ties very much into the syntax of programming or coding. So it's very much like speaking to a child that is highly capable, probably more capable in cognition than you could ever be. However, as you deal with a child, they just don't understand the context. So you either have to sidestep context completely and be direct, or you need to provide the context as you enter prompts or questions into ChatGPT for the best answers, right? And then the responses that you get from your prompt, you need to vet the responses that you receive and then force the large language model to interpret your questions or your thoughts more efficiently or more properly so there's no discrepancies in the data that you receive being um, off base from what you were initially asking. So what we'll do here is um, we'll add the screenshots that we just took, right? So we took this one, this one, this one, this one. Okay, we had one, two, three, four, this one, and this one. All right, add those to ChatGPT, and we'll send the prompt. All right, so we'll go back to the chart. We'll let ChatGPT finish doing its thing while it's thinking, but it shouldn't be too much longer. We'll go back and check the 5 minute chart to see what's going on. All right, so we have to make note of, or we have a good support level at $1,869. So we'll be keeping a close eye on if this support holds. And the resistance actually went up a little bit here. So that's quite interesting. We see that in real time here too. The resistance just spiked up to from 1892, just a smidge to 1893. So we're going to be keeping a lookout on that. But remember, we need to get out of this indecisive area of 1875 to 1892. Either way, we need to break out of here. We need to break here. We need to either go down more from this 1875 level, or we need to see a break through this resistance level at 1892 here. All right, let's see. ChatGPT is still working. We'll let it do it. We'll let it do its thing. We'll see what's going on. Check out the 15-minute time frame while we wait. All right. So we'll take a brief break. We'll come right back. We'll be right back shortly, and we'll let ChatGPT finish doing its thing. All right. We'll be back in like 5. All right, YouTube, we are back. On a brief break. Let's check on ChatGPT and see what it's come up with today. All right. So basically, what we're seeing right now is ChatGPT analyzing the data that we gave them based upon 6 time frames, utilizing our unique, our unique trading view indicator setup. Um, let's go over it just again really briefly. We're using the adaptive trend finder, we're using the Ichimoku cloud, and we're using our proprietary optimal entry point institutional state engine version 6.2 state emitter, which gives us this table down here, and it compiles a ton of data, a ton of indicators, and it tells us the state, the high time frame, the regime that we're in, the time of day or market time of day, Asian, London, New York, Wall Street, etc. It tells you the value per day of the asset. It tells you the weekly value of the asset. It tells us the micro, what's happening in the short term, and it's telling us it's a bear market in the short term. This is in long term. It tells us the weight of a long position instead of one, and this is on a scale of 0 to 10. And it tells us this is a short position, the value of a short position on a scale of 0 to 1 to 10. So right now, the market is neutral and it's quite mixed. And that speaks to what we were saying earlier about the indecisive range. This is a no trade zone between 1875 and 1892. We need to see something happen. The price needs to break above or below this particular range, and it needs to close. The candles need to close to give us some sort of sign of the potential path or direction. We need to see something definitively happen. So let's see what ChatGPT has to say where we are. So right now we're at 1875, but let's see what it says. So right now we have the snapshot from 11:55 a.m. We're currently at 12:08 a.m. Eastern Standard, 12:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. ETH was approximately sitting at 1881, right? So the primary bias right now is a bearish continuation, limited by higher time frame support. So what that means is there is a lot of selling in the market, and we've kind of maxed out on all the price movement to the upside. We've seen a pause in that, right? People are starting to say, okay, all right. ETH was really cheap. Bitcoin was really cheap. Let's go ahead and buy some. And now the people who were saying that, they're beginning to tap out or max out on the amount of money that they can spend on buying Ethereum and Bitcoin right now. Now, there is another element that comes into play. Whenever we do see a significant price move in real time, there are going to people who are going to experience FOMO, FOMO, and that's a fear of missing out on the price of an asset going up, or people can get scared when they see the price of an asset going down, and they'll just say it's better to lose money, some money, than to lose all of my money. So that's what we're seeing right now. The primary bias is a bearish continuation, meaning that we're probably going to see a little more selling. However, there is a significant amount of support the more time elapses throughout the day. So we're seeing that the price can go down, but there's a lot of money that's willing to hop back in and say, okay, this is the right price for me. And that support, that that in intent to buy more is holding the price exactly where it is. So there's going to be pushback against the price dropping significantly. That's ultimately what it's saying. So the directional weighting, it's about a 65% downside thought process or sentiment based upon the data, the buying and selling activity, the volume of the buying and the versus the selling. there's a 65% downside or people that are willing to sell versus people who are looking to buy right now. So the quality of an OEP is just above average. It's not nothing that we should say, okay, we're in an 80 out of 100 optimal entry point quality score. Yeah, we're right in near the middle of the pack. So the market condition is intraday means from day to day, from yesterday to today. That would be an intraday scenario. So the intraday bearish correction inside a still conservative 4-hour structure. So basically what that means is there's a correction from yesterday, yesterday's price going up and today's price coming down is just a correction for the people that may have overbought Ethereum and Bitcoin yesterday. So there's a little bit of correcting because people got a little bit overzealous buying so much of these assets between yesterday and now today. People are starting to take advantage on the seller side, or sellers are starting to take advantage of people who were a little bit overzealous buying at a higher price. So there is a lot of trap scenarios here, and we got to be careful when we look at these things where we see traps. You could kind of see traps being laid by the market manipulators that I speak about. So the trap direction, longs buying the 1887 to 1892 reclaim, right? And that's what we were speaking about. So people that bought up here, oh my, sellers were waiting for you. They were waiting for you to target. You see this right here? The chart tells us, man, and this is the thing. There's such good data in our optimum entry point institutional state engine. It tells you, it literally tells you where and what and how to do your trades. It tells you can see it consistently here. You can see it consistently here. You can even see where it dropped off, where you can see where there's going to be pushback. So at this level, this 1890 level, you see where that resistance is, and you can see it. There were wicks, there were people buying, and the price moved up, and the sellers jumped in. Even here, price went up, sellers said no, and they sent it down. Here, buyers tried to inch back up. They got back up here in the zone again. Nope, get down, sell, sell, sell. They tried it again. Nope, get down, get down, get down, get down. Buyers came in again at like 1871. They pumped it back up. Sellers said no again, and they sending it back down. So that's the trap. That's the trap. People with significant bags, people with high leverage, and they're understanding this. You can make some good money between this range if you were shorting 1890 to 1875. You didn't need to look for, the price to go to 1800 flat or 1820 with the right amount of leverage and the right amount of analysis, and especially utilizing our engine. You could see this. You could see it. It's here. It's not going anywhere until the price actually moves, but the data is going to track it in real time and it's going to tell us. So, so the immediate objective, right, is going to be 1876, then 1866, 1860. That's where ChatGPT is saying there's the highest probability of occurrence based upon the data that's set forth. So the current location, no trade. No trade. You should not be wagering on either side because there isn't a sufficient amount of data to give you a high probability to profit. And sometimes it's better to just hold them. It's like playing poker. Sometimes you got to hold them, sometimes you got to fold them, right? You got to know when to walk away. You got to know when to run. And sometimes you just need to just wait in the sidelines and let things happen. Let us show you. Let someone show you, just like how I'm showing you in real time, how to make money. We'll get into, utilizing exchanges, but I really want to harp on and build a strong foundation of understanding what you're seeing on our particular chart versus you look at a lot of other YouTubers in the financial crypto education space, and I'm like, okay, you're just looking at random indicators and you're just throwing numbers on the board and literally guessing. As a IT professional, I can't rely on guesswork. I have to be solution oriented. I have to be a problem solver. And so for when I look at someone telling me, "Oh, the price is going to go here and yada yada yada," but you don't know, you don't have you don't have tangible data. You're going off of piecemeal, or you're picking an indicator here, picking an indicator there, and then creating a narrative that isn't exactly founded versus having an indicator or set up in real time showing you, is the price phony? Is it real? The volume of liquidity, the volume of selling, the volume of buying. You don't get that. You just don't seem to get that from a lot of creators. But nevertheless, I digress. So let's break down what we're seeing here, and we'll go over what ChatGPT is saying. So what the chart is saying, the 4 hour structure, the larger advance from approximately 1550 to $1,930 has not been structurally invalidated. We could potentially go to 1930. ETH remains above the rising weekly VWAP near $1,855 through $1,862. This is the weekly value, fair value of Ethereum. Above the larger 4 hour cloud, this is just telling you where ETH remains. So it's above the Ichimoku cloud. The price is above the Ichimoku cloud 4 hour time frame. So, quote unquote, how you're supposed to utilize the Ichimoku cloud. We'll go back and just for a visual. This would be the Ichimoku cloud indicator. You can follow these little clouds here, and they'll kind of tell you the sentiment of the market or what's going on if it's a lot of selling. All right. So we're strictly talking about the 4 hour time frame. Don't confuse what I'm saying because this is the 15 minutes. So let me adjust it just briefly so you can see what I'm saying. So it's saying the price is above this cloud, this Ichimoku cloud. And it's saying the price is still on an uptrend, even though in the short term, there's been some selling off. Okay. So it's near the lower portion of the ascending channel, right? Ascending mean the price is going up. It's near the lower half of the channel, which potentially could signal some value to purchase it or buy it. And this may be for a long-term hold, not necessarily for a options trade, because there is still room for the price to go down. So we're currently in a corrective phase after the rejection of 1,927 through $1,940. So basically, there was a lot of selling when the price of Ethereum went up to $1,927 in between the $1,940 range. So this prevents the current setup from being classified as an unrestricted bearish swing because there's a lot of support. The probable downside is initially bounded to 1866 through the $1,850 range. So On the 1 hour and 30 minute 1 hour chart and a 30 minute chart is basically telling us these are the decisive time frames for the current trade. So the price is below the daily value, fair value, as the asset has been trading. The price still remains above the weekly value. The current micro state, the short time frame is bearish though. So in the interim, you need to be careful because the price could go down a little bit more. The 1 hour time frame shows materially stronger short evidence than long evidence on the 1 hour. The recovery into the $1,888 through the $1,892 failed. So we didn't see a push through it to give us a long signal, right? We're still in a neutral state because we still haven't received the short signal or the price hasn't fallen enough to say, okay, there's a more room to fall. The former ascending intraday structure has been broken. So that means along the 1 hour and 30 minute chart from yesterday to today, the price is not projecting to continue upward. It's projected to be downward, but it's currently in a neutral state where it still can recover and go up. So every rebound is producing lower acceptance rather than genuine recovery. The market is therefore searching for lower liquidity before the higher time frame bullish structure can attempt another sustained advance. So with crypto assets, right, you get a lot of manipulation and you're going to get the most money during the Wall Street hours. That's where the big money is. That's where the most money in the world is in the US economy as well as in the US stock market. You're talking trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And you have the wealthiest individuals on earth who are invested daily. Now, I know quite a few cryptocurrency developers, and I have, really good relationships with several prominent figures within the crypto space. One thing I've always noticed though is when I got into crypto, let's say from a um, somewhat of an insider space, I found that there are a ton of Saudis that are invested in the market. And due to the price of oil, there's so much money that they make that's just expendable and they have nothing to do but to make more investments. And what I see is the wealthiest of people put money in crypto because they can have high returns, low pay, very, very low fees. We're talking pennies on a dollar to move millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Pennies versus going to a bank and it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to move millions just in fees alone in a multitude of ways. So, but I digress. Um, so on the 15-minute and the 5 minute chart structure, the rebound from approximately $1,870 to $1,890 was absorbed directly beneath falling daily value, descending trend resistance, the lower edge of overhead supply, the $1,890 to $1,892 rejection shelf. The rejection back to $1,881 indicates that the move was predominantly short, covering and reactive buying, not confirmed bullish acceptance. So the primary optimal entry point trade failed reclaim short. We need a trigger though. So Ethereum needs a trigger in order for us to initiate a trade and to be able to get in at the optimal entry point of that trade. So we need ETH to trade back into 1886 or 1890 and then produce one of the following: a 5-minute rejection wick through $1,880, followed by a close below $1,885. Okay, so we also need, or we could have a 5-minute candle that reaches $1,890 through $1,892, but closes bearish. Or third, a brief move above the daily value that immediately loses it. So what's basically what we're saying here is the price, and we'll put this to a five, let's go to 15-minute chart. So basically what needs to happen is for us to create a short position, and that's what the primary bias is showing based upon the data, is that the price is going to travel back down. We need to see the price spike back up into this range with this little skinny line, which is called a wick. We need to see that candle wick somewhere. The price here needs to spike back up here with one of these skinny tops, these skinny lines. It's called a wick, but I'm just breaking it down. So we need to see this price spike back up here. And then when the candle closes, so right now it's 12:27 Eastern Standard Time, and we're on the 12:15 candle right here. We need to see the price spike up here into this resistance range right here, and then fall back under, or this candle, or the candle needs to close somewhere back down here in order for us to start looking at short positions. Now, so this is only, and this is a good thing about ChatGPT, especially when, or using a large language model to help you analyze your trades or your entry points, is to understand that uh, you are always going to be in a ever changing market and a always fluid flux of data that can change in an instant what you should or shouldn't do in a market. Now, there is an expiration on this particular setup in this time frame. So 20 to 40 minutes after confirmation of your trigger, you need to be looking at something different. You need to be refreshing your data. You need to be putting more data in to your large language model in order to understand what should be done in this moment and what has happened since the prior analysis. So it looks like, so we got some economic news here. It looks like the expiration should end before the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Federal Reserve speech on the economic outlook, unless the intention is specifically to trade the event. So you kind of need to be careful unless you really know what's going to happen when you start listening to what the Fed says. The Federal Reserve Bank is a very, 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 very powerful entity. Um, as a former banker, I would fancy to say that the Federal Reserve is more powerful than any entity And you can't even call them a government agency because, quite frankly, they're independent. But let's just say a government entity for semantics sake. They are far more powerful than any branch of the government, in my humble opinion. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to, now that we have a prognostication on what could happen, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna step aside. I'll let the chart flow and let you all be able to analyze it. So what we're gonna do is I'll hop back on and I'll listen to the speech myself to get a better outlook, and then I'll hop back on and I'll break things down a little bit further, and we'll look at it in real time because I definitely want to get a new trade in here myself for the day. It just hasn't been an opportunity yet, and it's quite frankly, it's a no trade zone. Like I said, so just for a point of reference, if the price stays between $1,875 to $1,892, not financial advice. I can't give you all financial advice. My wife could; she has all of the certifications and all of that stuff. I'm just the IT guy, cybersecurity guy who's made a lot of money trading crypto, and somebody who loves the technology and loves to help people. And I hate to see people lose money when they shouldn't. And so a lot of people hop in to these trades not knowing when and what to do, or they listen to these YouTubers and telling you the price is going to the moon tomorrow. And that's just not the case when you can actually look at the real time data and see where you should be and where you shouldn't be. But once again, the price between $1,875 to $1,892 is a no trade zone. If we get a pop above 1892, we need to start looking at a push up into 1900, low 1900s to maybe 1915. We go beyond that, you got a profitable trade, and you need to make sure you lock in your stop losses at 1915 if we go above it. If we don't see the price pump above 1892 and we do see a price drop below 1875, we're going to start looking at short positions. However, there's a lot of support. There's some really good support. So we got to be really careful. If we hop in a trade, let's say at 1870, it may not be a lot of downside runway, but you still could get in. And you can take advantage of that depending on your position size and your leverage size. So be very careful though, nevertheless. So like I said, we'll hop in after the Federal Reserve speech about the economic outlook, and we'll hop back in and close out the day and see what happens during the end of the market. All right, we'll be back shortly.